Hi, everybody. Welcome to Working Nation's town hall meetings on cybersecurity, cracking the code. I'm Teresa Collington. I oversee digital media for Working Nation, so that includes the website, social media, and the content you get on mobile phones. So I get the distinguished honor of reminding you to turn the ringer off on your phone. Although we would like to see you tweet and take a look at Facebook if you feel the need to do so during this event. We are live broadcast on Facebook and YouTube, and the hashtag is Working Nation, all one word. So again, welcome. Phones encouraged for social media, ringers off. We'll reach a point in our broadcast where we do a question and answer. So we'd really like you to participate in that. What we ask is that you wait until somebody hands you the mic, like this. And then when you get the mic, hold it up nice and close to your mouth and your voice so we can hear your question and that the panelists can respond, and we look forward to that. And then the important part, right after the event, please join us around the corner in room 161 for adult beverages and some snacks and to mix and mingle with our panelists and talk about cybersecurity. So thanks and welcome. And Jane Oates, Working Nation's president.
Thanks, Teresa.
Sure.
I'm going to add to Teresa's welcome. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I want to just say, for those of you who don't know Working Nation was founded by Art Bilger, who you will meet in a few minutes. It is a nonprofit media movement, not a company, a movement. Founded really to tell the story of how jobs are changing in the 21st century. Jobs have always changed, but never at this pace. Online, you may see our piece, Slope of the Curve, one of many pieces done by our incredibly talented team. You met Teresa, I hope you meet the rest of them. But Working Nation needs you to be all that it can be. We need to make sure that the solutions that we tell the stories of expand and go to scale. We need to make sure that every American knows what job to plan for if they're just starting their journey, or what job they may have to change to if they've had a reason to be dislocated from their current job. Today, we're going to explore cybersecurity, both the incredible need there in terms of jobs and the breadth of jobs. Jobs that require high school plus a certificate all the way up to a PhD. We are so delighted to have the incredibly talented panel that we have, and I know you're going to enjoy today. Please get ready for your questions, but right now, it is my privilege to introduce my friend, my boss, Working Nation's founder, Art Bilger.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Jane. And I really mean a very big thank you to Jane. Jane joined us as president of Working Nation and about a few months ago. And she'd been working with us as an advisor. And she has really, we have taken off. So thank you very much. Just quickly, I'll say, I began this whole idea about 4 years ago. Came together in my head, this whole idea of Working Nation and the issues that this nation faces. And really have come to the conclusion through extensive research that I really believe this is the most critical issue facing our nation. And you'll see, as we discuss, you'll see some of our video also, that things are changing so quickly, whether you're across industries and technology, that our mission is to educate the most sophisticated, right down to the least sophisticated in society, about these issues, because we can't wait for white papers and conferences to educate the population as to where the employment market is going. So anyway, that's the background on it. I want to thank the audience who is sitting here with us today. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy day. I want to thank our panelists and our moderator for bringing their tremendous expertise and knowledge, as you will see in the discussion. I want to thank the audience out and watching this now and later, and hopefully this will stimulate thoughts and ideas that you can pursue. Finally, I want to thank the Working Nation team for the efforts that they've put in. We launched Working Nation in September of 2016 officially. And this team has worked literally round the clock since then. And so I want to thank everyone on the Working Nation team. I want to also extend a very important thank you to Ron Brockman, director of the Jacobs Technion-Cornell Institute, for hosting us here today. As many of you know, we are dedicating today's town hall to an individual in the honor of the memory of a fellow named Danny Lewin. You'll learn more about Danny because several people will speak about him. But his memory is being honored. One, he was a graduate of the Technion. Two, cybersecurity, the subject matter here, was right in Danny's sweet spot. Danny was the young founder of Akamai Technologies. And actually, Working Nation wouldn't exist if Danny hadn't educated me as to what the internet was and what was going on in the tech world. And so this event is in honor of his memory. And so everyone I should mention the reason it's in his memory is Danny was the first person to die on 9/11. He was on the Boston-LA flight, and because of his background, he took on the terrorists. It's in the 9/11 papers. He took on the terrorists, and one came up from behind and killed him. So anyway, the world lost an incredible human being. With that, I'd like to introduce Zahava Barnir, president of the American Technion Society, who will say a few words about Danny.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today on the new Cornell Tech campus, home of the Jacobs Technion-Cornell Institute, as we honor a truly extraordinary man. This campus was created to break down barriers between countries, cultures, and scientific disciplines. The life and legacy of Danny Lewin embodied that spirit in a powerful way. A Technion alum, he worked to advance scientific progress during his life and represented the very special bridge between the United States and Israel. Danny was born in Denver in 1970 and moved with his parents to Israel at the age of 14. He served with distinction in the Israel Defense Forces. In 1995, he was named the Technion's Outstanding Student of the Year in Computer Engineering. In 1998, he co-founded Akamai Technologies, which today run one of the world's largest distributed computing platforms. His pioneering work earned him wide recognition as one of the most influential figures of the internet age. Tragically, as you heard, Danny was murdered aboard American Airlines Flight 11 just after it was hijacked during the attack of September 11, 2001. He was reportedly the first person killed on that flight after heroically taking action to try and prevent the hijacking. Danny left behind an inspiring legacy that embodies the best of US and Israel, courage and ingenuity. While our enemies intimidate, we innovate. We produce groundbreaking technologies both on our own and by working together, and export this solution internationally in order to address the world's greatest needs. From business to media to education to government, we are all here today to acknowledge that cybercrime is a global problem. To solve it, we follow in the footsteps of Danny's legacy. Though his life was cut far too short, he made several lifetimes worth of bridge building contributions between Israelis and Americans and on the global stage. Thank you for Working Nation, to Cornell Tech, and to all of you here today in Danny's honor. Let's commit to never stop building the bridges between our people in technologies and beyond. Now, to honor Danny's work, I welcome Andy Ellis from Akamai Technologies.
Thank you, Zahava. Thank you, Art. Danny was a powerful and amazing man. We often described him as obstreperous. Actually, Danny described himself as obstreperous. And it's fitting that I get to be here today as Akamai's Chief Security Officer. When I first met Danny, I had just come to Akamai. I'd left the United States Air Force, where I'd been an information warfare engineer, and I was very full of myself. I thought I knew everything about security. I was wrong, because what I knew was technology. And Danny understood that security was more than just technology. It was about people, it was about process, it was about marketing, and it was about sales. And Danny saw in me the ability that I could grow and that I could become that person. And together we built Akamai's secure content delivery network, which at the time we thought would deliver financial service applications and websites all around the world. We were about 10 years early in the design and building of that, but we were ready when the market was ready. And because Danny saw in me that opportunity, the ability to grow and the ability to be more than just an engineer, I am where I am today, having launched products successfully, having been on the road doing sales and marketing, and then standing here today as the head of security for Akamai. And so Danny leaves that legacy in many people, because when you interacted with Danny, Danny not only was larger than life, but he thought you could be too. And so I'm honored here today, and Art has presented a small video for us to look a little bit at Danny's life. Thank you.
I don't think we can overstate the impact that Danny Lewin had on the world and my life during his brief 31 years. While I've known a lot of interesting and influential people, it is safe to say that Danny Lewin was the most remarkable. Danny was literally my very first introduction to the world of technology. I didn't even own a computer when I was invited to Cambridge, Massachusetts by a colleague in 1998 to speak with supposedly the smartest human being I would ever meet. It was during that meeting that Danny showed me how the company he co-founded, Akamai Technologies, was going to speed up the internet and how computer technology was poised to dramatically change the world we live in. When Danny was murdered on September 11th, attempting to thwart the terrorists on American Airlines Flight 11, we lost one of the truly remarkable individuals on this planet. He was the rare person of incredible intellect and action, a truly one-of-a-kind person. It is safe to say that meeting Danny completely altered the trajectory of my life, and without him, I don't even think WorkingNation would exist. I often pause to think about the incredible contributions he would be making to the world if he were alive today. So it fills me with great pride to dedicate today's event to the memory of this remarkable man, our friend and colleague, Danny Lewin.
We have another gut-wrenching story about the middle class and its workers tonight.
So after I was let go, it was complete and utter shock.
I have to come up with another plan, and I don't have one.
There's a problem that's coming, and it's coming very quickly.
You're thinking, how do I start making money again to support my family? Because you're absolutely terrified.
In 2016, WorkingNation was formed with one mission: to raise and elevate awareness, finding and sharing solutions to the unemployment crisis facing our country.
Outside of bad guys getting terrible weapons, this is the most important issue facing this nation.
To accomplish this crucial goal, WorkingNation illuminates the heartfelt and human stories that capture this distress and resolve. Through organized town halls, important news and information programming with national distribution partners, and moving documentaries.
Your identity is just taken away from you.
I mean, there's no handbook that shows you this is what you need to do.
WorkingNation brings powerful voices together to reveal the real people and organizations attacking this issue in their communities.
People don't need charity. People need opportunities.
Working to build consensus and collaboration between business leaders, the academic community, and the American public.
There are millions of people in this country who want to be of service.
To expose hard truths about this unemployment emergency in order to create and amplify the right response.
We're all working towards the same goal.
Time is running out. We all have to do something to make this shift. Working Nation. Please lend your voice and get involved now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cracking the Code, a Working Nation town hall on the cybersecurity issues facing us, including the skills gap that currently exists in this space, something we're going to get into great detail about throughout the entire evening of our conversation, along with everyone gathered here at the Bloomberg Center at the Cornell Tech campus on New York's Roosevelt Island. I'd like to welcome viewers who are also joining us online as we live stream our discussion. Now, we have a lot of ground to cover. Most organizations are not asking if they will be the target of a data breach, but when. The Ponemon Institute puts the odds of experiencing a data breach as high as 1 in 4. And the White House Council of Economic Advisors estimates that malicious cyber activity cost the U.S. economy between $57 and $109 billion in 2016. Now, that's a staggering number, yet there is a gaping disconnect in the workforce armed with the skills to address these cybersecurity threats. By one estimate, there will be a global shortage of as many as 2 million cybersecurity professionals by 2019. Other projections only show that number to be growing. Now, we want to look at reasons why cybersecurity jobs are going unfilled. But a large part of our focus tonight will center on solutions to bridging the skills gap causing that shortage. We have a dynamic lineup of panelists representing technology, insurance, finance, healthcare, and utility companies who will take you inside their organizations and share what they're doing to bolster their information security workforce. We'll also get a look at the growing demand for cybersecurity experts and where job needs are greatest right now in the United States. First, though, we want to kick off our discussion by taking a look at just how big the cybersecurity threat is to business, the government, and to individuals as well. And we didn't have to look any further than this campus to find one of the best and brightest minds in the field. Ari Jules is a professor here at the Jacobs Technion-Cornell Institute. He is also co-director of the Initiative for Cryptocurrencies and Contracts. Previously, he was the chief scientist for the network security company RSA. Let me invite Ari up. And Ari, thank you for joining us for this. We want to start off this discussion by providing the big picture, and please have a seat. And just if you would, offer us your assessment of where we are with respect to this cybersecurity threat, both here and abroad.
Well, I'd like to talk in particular about cybersecurity education, which is obviously going to be critical in filling in the skills gap. I worked in industry for almost 2 decades, most recently, as you noted, as chief scientist at RSA, a security company. And as I was leading research on the development of new cybersecurity tools, I had an opportunity to interact quite a bit with what's called the Security Operations Center, which is, if you will, the nerve center for IT security within any organization. Now, picture, if you will, as in the movies, a room filled with monitors, with sophisticated graphics, maps, and so on and so forth. And cybersecurity experts beavering away, trying to uncover hackers, and so on and so forth. This is the sort of cinematic picture we have of what goes on in a security operations center. The reality, though, as you can imagine, is somewhat different. At RSA and at many other companies, there is indeed a room bedecked with monitors, with sophisticated graphics, and so on and so forth, but often it's just for show. At RSA, for instance, they would bring visitors to this room. What are the security operations professionals, in fact, doing? Often they're using rather crude sort of command line, which is to say text-only tools, processing alerts generated by intrusion detection systems, triaging them, and doing work that's not as romantic as the movies would have you believe, essentially doing work that is largely mechanistic. They are professionals with deep expertise. Often that expertise is focused on a particular set of tools and technologies. And of course, many of them have extremely broad knowledge, familiarity with different threat actors, with the sophisticated tactics of hackers, and so on and so forth.
And that goes from state-sponsored actors to corporate criminals to all the way down to just individual bad actors who are looking to play with the system, if you will, for either fun or profit, correct?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Anyone trying to breach a network is their adversary. But as I mentioned, the tools that they use are fairly crude, right? Now, when we talk about the cybersecurity skills gap, what we often mean is an inability to fill rooms with people who have precisely this expertise. But I would argue that we need to think a little bit more holistically about the cybersecurity skills gap, that it's not just about educating cybersecurity professionals, but educating professionals, and I use the term writ large, in cybersecurity. I want cybersecurity expertise not just in the people securing my network, but in the people designing autonomous vehicles, building banking systems, building systems like implanted medical devices that are life critical.
All of which are presumably hackable in some way or another, right?
And all of these things are hackable. When we talk about cyber-physical devices like automobiles and implanted medical devices, the implications of hacking, of course, can be fatal. So as I said, we need to think more broadly. I teach a cybersecurity survey course, security and privacy course here at Cornell Tech. And most of the students in the course are not going to become cybersecurity professionals. Some of them do, most don't. But I want all of them to take away something of value. To do that, I see the most essential proposition as instilling them with what I would call the security mindset or adversarial mindset, which is to say that they should be able, in any professional situation, or in fact any situation in daily life, to perceive the security implications of the products they're building, the systems they're interacting with, and so on and so forth. They should be able to see through a cybersecurity lens no matter what they're looking at.
Now, this is something we've not seen. I don't mean to interrupt you, but so you look at the government level, and there have been massive data breaches, Office of Personnel Management. We look at Facebook, and we understand what happened during the election. We look at young people today who will put anything online and not necessarily begin to think of not just the personal implications of exposure, but also how much data that they're putting out about themselves. How do you orient people to understand that effectively now, really, if you're engaged in that arena, you are at risk all the time?
Yes, well, it's, as I said, a matter of teaching this security mindset. And it's something that doesn't come naturally. Now, we're generally educated to be polite, law-abiding citizens. If you take a physics course, right, you learn the laws of physics. These are the rules according to which you operate in the course. If you take a math course, you learn the axioms of mathematics. You must obviously abide by those rules or axioms in the course, in your exploration of the field. And the same goes in many walks of life. But the adversarial mindset means thinking about how rules can be broken, how adversaries in particular will break rules. And this is a challenging thing to teach. It's a challenging mindset to adopt, as I said, because it really goes against the grain for most people, and it is an abrogation of many of the things that we are taught.
So when I was growing up, there was a TV show called, and they've done it again in different iterations, but Scared Straight, which was trying to keep kids from going down the wrong road in life. And so they used prisoners to describe what the threat of breaking the law would be, and this is where you would end up. How do you shock people effectively into describing the threats that exist in the world of cyber so that they come to understand that going down the wrong road could lead to a disastrous outcome?
Well, I try to do it a little bit more gently.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Rather than shocking them, trying to teach them how to perceive the security implications, as I said, of anything they're doing. And in any aspect of their lives, there is a security story to be told. I sometimes think of the classic Superman movie from the 1970s, a Christopher Reeve movie. You remember there was a villain by the name of Lex Luthor who said that something like, some people can read War and Peace and see nothing but a simple adventure story. Others can read a chewing gum wrapper and unlock the secrets of the universe. And really, the goal with the security mindset is to be able to unlock the secrets of the security universe, as it were, no matter what object you happen to be looking at. So for example, in one of the lectures I give here, I ask students to explore their change purses or wallets and find security technologies. And you would be amazed. Almost every object in a wallet has some security story. A good example, a coin, say the US quarter, has actually a very deep security story behind it. It's got those sort of ridged edges. You may ask, well, why are they there? Are they decorative? They're actually a very clever security technology, right? A remnant of a very clever security technology. So it used to be that coins were minted in precious metal. Today, of course, they're made of base metals. They used to be made of precious metal. And so what people would do is shave a little bit of the metal off the coin or clip a bit of metal off the coin and amass on the side a nice pile of precious metal that, of course, could be resold. Well, this activity led to a crisis, in fact, an economic crisis in the 17th century in the UK, where coins had been debased to the point where nobody trusted the currency. Right? So somebody came up with a very clever solution to this problem, which was, like this solution had been used before, but to put ridges on the edge of the coin so that this type of shaving of the coin or clipping of the coin could be detected. The person who did that was at that time, I believe, the warden of the mint, a fellow by the name of Sir Isaac Newton.
He's somewhat familiar to some people.
Yeah. Some people may have heard of this fellow. Yes, indeed. Possibly, though, for
other reasons.
Other reasons, yeah. Well, okay, that's the 17th century in the UK. What has this got to do with life today? Well, this mechanism is what's known as a tamper detection tool. It enables you to detect the fact that the coin's been tampered with. And tamper detection tools are used on a widespread basis today. If you buy a gaming console, it's probably sealed with a holographic sticker to detect your tampering with it, to install what are called mods or unauthorized games. It's the same technology, it's the same concept. So as I said, the security mindset is the ability to look at any system, any object, and see the security story, understand the security implications, to look at medical devices, autonomous vehicles.
How do you scale all this? I mean, given how reliant we've become on various technologies, whether it's internet, whether it is smart devices, the Internet of Things, how do you scale the size of the problem so that it makes sense for people to understand what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis?
Well, as I said, I think the important thing is to educate not just cybersecurity professionals, but to educate people who are making decisions that need to be informed by cybersecurity. These are product managers. These are the C-suites in companies, and so on and so forth. Another important thing, I think, and this is where the question of the skills gap comes into play, is who is going to help translate between the technical experts and the non-technical leaders and decision makers who need to be informed about the security implications of their decisions. We, for example, polled a number of security companies in New York City and asked them what they would like to see in a cybersecurity curriculum at Cornell Tech. They said one of the most important things, a niche they would like to see filled, is this role of translator. As they would like to develop within the cybersecurity workforce or outside the cybersecurity workforce, a core of people who are capable of bridging the gap in expertise between the cybersecurity world, between the engineers
Translator,
and
if you will.
A translator.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Before we break, let me just ask you one quick question with respect to one of the newest innovations in what is perceived to be an unhackable part of the technology sphere, which is blockchain technology, the underlying technology on which a lot of cryptocurrencies have been based. That's another conversation for another time. But is that underlying technology, the blockchain, going to be used in such a way that it is unhackable and much more secure than anything we know today?
Well, blockchains have some very nice properties, and resilience to hacking is one of them. The Bitcoin network has been operational without a serious hiccup for how long now? Almost 10 years, right? And the technology that underpins it can be used in a wide variety of systems, not just for cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, but for other things as well. So that's the positive feature of the technology. It does have limitations, though. There are a lot of technological problems we will need to overcome if blockchains are really to achieve their full promise. For example, one of the things that blockchains give you is transparency.
Right.
Everything that happens on the blockchain is visible to the whole world. This is great, right? It's what enables us to determine authoritatively who owns what Bitcoin. But there's a downside to this, which is that transparency means no confidentiality. And confidentiality is critical to all kinds of business operations. Right. This is just one of the problems. There are problems with scaling. There are problems with delivering authenticated data to what are called smart contracts, or applications that run on blockchains. Right. So it's a technology with a lot of promise. It helps address some cybersecurity issues, but it also raises a lot of technology challenges that researchers and the community at large are trying to address today.
Unfortunately, we won't be able to answer all those today, but we do appreciate your taking the time. Ari Jules, thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, with demand comes opportunity. We will look at where cybersecurity jobs happen to be. Stay with us. Thanks. Welcome back, everyone. As companies struggle to fill cybersecurity jobs, the other part of the equation that's puzzling is the fact that these jobs, for the most part, pay quite well. The Bureau of Labor Statistics lists the median pay for an information security analyst at roughly $95,000 a year for someone with a bachelor's degree and less than 5 years of experience in a related field. So why are many jobs unfilled, and where exactly are the jobs that need to, in fact, be filled? Joining us now to answer the question is Will Marco. He is Manager of Client Strategy and Analytics at Burning Glass Technologies. Burning Glass is a labor market analytics firm. And Will, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Let me start first with respect to Burning Glass, exactly what it is you guys do.
Sure, and it's my pleasure to be here today. And Burning Glass is a labor market analytics and software company, like you said, and what we really do is use big data to help people get better jobs. We have what we think is the largest database in the world of online job posting data. We're able to analyze that data using machine learning to better understand what types of jobs and what types of skills are in demand so that we can analyze some of the new and emerging fields such as cybersecurity and help provide information to job seekers, employers, and educators about how to prepare more workers for those fields.
So this is a much more specialized organization than a LinkedIn or a Monster or something along those lines, correct?
Correct,
yeah.
Correct.
All right, so with respect to that, then give us an overview of the skills gap itself. So we've heard a lot. There are 6.7 million open jobs in the United States. There are 6.4 million unemployed. There's a gap of 300,000 workers in terms of shortages across the spectrum. So when it comes to something as specific as cybersecurity, what is that gap? What does it mean? And what needs to be done to bridge it?
So cybersecurity is unique for a number of reasons. It has one of the largest talent shortages. If we just look at the supply relative to demand in the market, the employed cybersecurity workforce, it would have to more than double overnight just to have a supply and demand ratio that is in line with the market average. And we're already in a tight market. So cybersecurity is suffering from one of the most crippling talent shortages in the market. And what makes it unique is that it's probably going to get a lot worse.
Now, why does this gap exist? I mean, so we've heard now, and I have Gen Z kids, all we hear about is STEM education. All we hear about is coding. All we hear is about you have to know these things in order to be part of this next generation economy. Why does this gap exist if presumably school curricula are focused on these very areas?
So there are a few reasons. The first is it is growing rapidly. It is growing, cybersecurity jobs are growing about 5 times faster than IT jobs overall. And the industries that are housing our most valuable information, such as retail, such as healthcare, such as finance, they're seeing demand grow even faster for cybersecurity jobs. So we need to make sure that supply, obviously, is responding to this increase in demand, but all signs indicate that currently it's not. When we look at the talent pipeline for cybersecurity jobs, we see that it is clogged. And one of the main reasons for that is employers are asking for heightened experience and education requirements, and that is preventing new workers from entering into the field. So about 15% of cybersecurity jobs, only about 15%, are open to workers without a bachelor's degree. Only about 15% are open to workers who don't have at least 3 to 5 years of previous work experience in the field. And so we're effectively chopping off the entry-level rung for the career ladder into cybersecurity.
I mean, are you incapable of exploring a job like this if you don't have a bachelor's, if you don't have a master's, if you don't have a PhD? What's the education level that's required to get an entry-level job here?
So it's interesting because historically, employers were not looking for such heightened experience requirements and education requirements. Actually, about 30 to 40% of the employed cybersecurity workforce doesn't have a bachelor's degree. So employers are shifting what they're asking for, and that's preventing workers from even applying for jobs because they think they're not qualified, even if they have the skills. And compounding the issue is certifications as well, because employers, they are asking for certifications, which serve an important purpose in the market, but they are often being used as a proxy when they really don't need to be, for skills when they really don't need to be.
I mean, for instance, it's not like getting a broker's license or something along those lines that's actually required and is a regulatory requirement of an industry in which you operate, right? I mean, the certifications just assume or produce a basic level of competence.
They do, and they do serve an important purpose in the market. They do signal to employers that somebody has the skills necessary to perform a particular role in many cases, but employers, they often don't know which certifications they should really be asking for. So CISSP is a great example. It's the most requested certification in cybersecurity. There are about 80,000.
What is that, by the way?
So Certified Information Systems Security Professional.
Okay.
And there are about 80,000 openings every year asking for a CISSP. There are only about 75,000 individuals in the entire country who even have that credential. So there's no way we can fill those positions. And employers, they need to figure out whether that's a need to have credential or a nice to have. And in many cases, it is just a nice to have. And if they remove it from their job requisitions, they're going to have a much easier time filling those roles, and it's going to be easier to bring more people into the cybersecurity field.
Is that the most important thing that should be done, or are there other things that could be done by employers and educators to bridge this gap?
So there are definitely other things that can be done. In general, we need to have better signaling between employers and educators and job seekers so that everybody actually knows, A, what demand looks like, and B, how supply can respond to the changes in demand. If you have workers who have most of the skills necessary for a job in cybersecurity, but employers are saying, well, we're not going to hire you unless you have a CISSP, then those people aren't going to apply. They're going to think they are cut off from those jobs. And so we need employers to have better demand signaling so that they can mobilize more workers to actually enter into the field who have the skills and the interest and the aptitude. And on the supply side, educators and job seekers, they need to know how to find the information about these jobs so that they can build the skills and the coursework necessary to respond to the rapid increases in cybersecurity demand.
All right, so let's talk about where the jobs are and where the workers are. So this is kind of a weird Tinder, if you will, for cybersecurity specialists. They need to know where to go, and conversely, the employers need to know where to find people. Is there a geographic mismatch among those who may have the skills and where the jobs actually reside?
So there is a geographic mismatch, but in many cases there's just a gap everywhere. No matter where you go, you're going to see a gap, whether it's by geography, whether it's by industry. And going back to the signaling problem, we need more workers and more employers to know what the nature of demand and supply really looks like. And so at Burning
Is it all
Glass,
concentrated in Silicon Valley, or as we look across the map of the United States, how do you square all that?
Sure. So we see demand everywhere. So obviously in the tech hubs of Silicon Valley, New York actually has one of the largest absolute numbers of demand for cybersecurity jobs. But we also see demand in emerging markets, or emerging fields that are cybersecurity hubs. We see huge demand in Colorado. We see huge demand in Columbus, one of the fastest growing regions actually, because the retail sector there is hiring a lot of cybersecurity workers. So we're seeing.
It's also home to Ohio State University.
Of course.
I'm not a fan there, but
and so
I'm a Notre Dame guy myself.
So we're seeing this rapid increase in jobs across the country, and we're not seeing the corresponding increase in supply in most regions, and that's exacerbating the skill gap across the country.
Now, with respect to the educational community, are they dropping the ball in any way, shape, or form here by not directing their graduates or even their undergraduates or community college kids to places that they could be going? Or in some cases, is there a lack of mobility on the part of the employee, him or herself, that might be inhibiting the matchup?
So I think that higher education is doing a good job with the information that they have in trying to prepare workers for jobs in cybersecurity. I think that part of the issue is that historically there was not good information about the cybersecurity workforce. Data from the government, Bureau of Labor Statistics, is incomplete. It doesn't track the entirety of the cybersecurity workforce. And so, and it doesn't tell you anything about the specific types of skills that are necessary in different jobs within that field. So cybersecurity jobs are not a monolith, and educators, they need information about the specific types of skills, the specific types of roles that are available within the field so that they can train workers for those jobs.
And how do you more broadly address the employee population, which probably assumes that most of these folks are ex-NSA, ex-CIA, ex-FBI, counterintelligence specialists who have the ability to hack back, to do all kinds of things that are required of them in that sphere. That seems to be the prevailing assumption on the part of people who look at this particular space.
So that is an assumption we see in many people who are even hiring managers, and that is handicapping many employers who need to tap into new pools of latent cybersecurity talent. And the way that they can do that is by looking at new jobs that have, they might not be new jobs, but they have their jobs that they're not currently recruiting from for cybersecurity jobs that are skill adjacent to many cybersecurity roles. So in a tool that we've released with CompTIA, as well as a national initiative for cybersecurity education called cyberseek.org, we have a career pathway in that tool, which includes a set of what we're calling cybersecurity feeder jobs. And these are essentially skill adjacent jobs to core cybersecurity jobs that have 70 or 80 or 90% of the skills that workers would need for a job in cybersecurity, and they just need to add those last mile skills to their portfolio. And if employers can identify those feeder jobs, workers within those roles, either within their organization or external to their organization, then they can tap into new pools of talent who have most of the skills, don't need to get a 4-year degree to be trained up in these skills, and they can expand their talent pipeline dramatically.
Now, before I go to the audience, I want to get a couple questions from them. But let me just ask you, what are those skills that get you that so-called skill adjacent or feeder job with an organization that's trying to branch out?
Sure, so it really depends on the role and the organization, obviously, but some of the general skills that we see are, obviously the general information security expertise, some networking and systems knowledge, but we're also seeing that many cybersecurity jobs are hybridizing and are starting to require new skill sets from disparate functional domains that don't align with traditional training pathways. So for example,
so if there's a kid watching right now that's in college, please just translate what you just said into English.
Sure. So what that means is if you already have, say, some systems knowledge or some cybersecurity knowledge, you are increasingly going to be asked to pair that with knowledge of big data or data analysis or software development. Somebody, I think earlier today, was saying that we should have every software developer know some cybersecurity as well. And so if you are a student, you need to not only learn about cybersecurity, but you also need to learn about some of these other fields that are increasingly being incorporated into the cybersecurity workers' portfolio.
All right, let's go to the audience right now, and if you would, raise your hand if you do indeed have a question, and I'd like you to wait till the microphone gets to you directly, so please feel free. Yes, this gentleman right here. And give us your name, your political affiliation, and who you voted for in the last election before you ask your question.
Well, I live in the UK, so but I still vote here.
Okay.
So
Ms. May.
go
Yeah.
Gary Johnson. No, so basically, education isn't for everyone. And I did notice on the chart that 16% sub BA that employers are requesting. Obviously, like I said, education isn't affordable for everyone. It isn't possible for everyone, and not everyone wants to go into education. And I know a lot of cybersecurity professionals in the UK, and probably here as well, don't have those type of skills. So how do you get employers to lower that requirement where there may be other skills that they have?
So I think that there are a couple of things you can do. The first thing that you can do is just show them the numbers. Tell them, hey, if you have these heightened experience and education requirements, it is going to be much harder to fill these jobs. So one of the things that we sometimes do is we'll tell employers, hey, if you add this education requirement or this skill requirement or the certification requirement, then it's going to take you X number of days longer to fill that job. It's going to be much harder. You're going to be open to more vulnerabilities during that time when you can't fill that job. So if you reduce your requirements and just help to hire workers with the skills and not just the degrees necessary to perform this job, then it's going to be much easier for you to fill these jobs. You'll expand your talent pipeline, and you might find workers who are more invested in the work than somebody who has a bachelor's degree and might try to move into another field because just by virtue of having that degree, they might have more options.
Now, let me ask you, though, I mean, there's a movie from many years ago called Don't Raise the Bridge, Lower the River. Is there an issue of lowering standards to such an extent that you might be not filling your needs adequately and then really have to redouble your efforts at some juncture in order to make up the difference?
So it's really not about lowering standards. It's about finding more efficient proxies for competence. So a degree, a 4-year degree, it is often used as a blanket credential for competence in any field. It doesn't actually mean you have the skills to perform that job.
Right. Somebody got a C in med school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if we have, so this is actually where certifications can be very useful, or other shorter term credentials, such as micro-credentials, can be used to help employers see specifically, yes, this person might not have a 4-year degree, but because they have this credential, I know they can perform the tasks necessary to succeed in this job.
Yes, ma'am, up there.
My name is Allison Lands, and I'm an economic and workforce development strategist, and I'd like to ask a little bit about marginally attached, discouraged workers, folks who are currently still out of work who might be looking for jobs. Clearly, there is a lot of road to cover between where they are now and being able to work full-time in a cybersecurity capacity, possibly compounded with the need to actually understand functional knowledge if they're working in a non-tech role. So if they're working for, a retail operation or something like that, they would actually need to know something about the business in addition to their technology knowledge. What can you tell us about the really upstream pipeline for folks who are trying to get traction in the workplace? How realistic is it for them to be able to be software testers or issue management or response in some capacity? How can they move up into those roles? And then also I'd like to know if you have any intelligence about security clearances and the prevalence of people with criminal convictions to be able to work in this field. Thanks.
Sure. So, taking the first question, about displaced workers who, have more ground to cover to qualify for some of these jobs. You said something interesting about how they probably will need to know something about the industry or the business that they're working in as well. And most people, even if they've been out of the workforce for a little while, they have some previous experience that they can draw upon, even if it's just working in retail. The fact that you have worked in retail means you know that space, you have some skills that you've developed that help you to understand that industry, and you can recognize that those skills can be paired with new skills that you can learn and open yourself up to more opportunities. So if you have retail skills, for example, you could go and take a short-term training program, or gain one of the short-term certifications from CompTIA, for example, add that to your portfolio, and then go look for help desk jobs in the retail industry. Being able to go to employers and say, yes, I've built these tech skills and I already understand your industry is a powerful way to get your foot in the door. The second question that you asked about security clearance and people with prior criminal convictions. I haven't seen data about prior criminal convictions and people moving into cybersecurity, but I have seen that security clearance is a frequently requested credential. And it actually is, it actually is another issue in the field, because many roles are asking for security clearance. That makes it harder to fill as well. And some employers might be using that as a credential that isn't really necessary, but they're still adding it to their portfolio because, to the point that you raised earlier, many employers still think that you should have that security or military background to move into this field. So that is another place, actually, where lowering the requirements for that specific credential may help you to find more workers. It's not always possible. If you're looking for government contracts, you can't do that. But in many cases, you could reconsider whether you absolutely need that credential in your job requisition.
Do we have any more? I hate to personalize this, but so I, as I said, 3 Gen Z kids, one of whom is self-taught in music production, and all of a sudden, in a matter of 2 years, understands fully how to utilize all these various tools that come with the creation of a certain type of music. For kids who are self-taught like this, who have some sort of aptitude, irrespective of how they do in school or in other areas, is there a road for them? If they're just very good at understanding how computers work and how to interact with all different types of tools, whether they're focused in one area or not, does that become translatable down the road?
It absolutely does. And employers, they do value being able to demonstrate that you're a self-starter, that you have learned all of these skills even without formal training, but you still need a way to demonstrate that you have those skills. It might not necessarily have to be a credential, like a 4-year degree or a certification, but maybe you can be creative and create a project on the side that demonstrates your ability in a particular field. In cybersecurity specifically now, there are many opportunities to enter hacking competitions or other types of cybersecurity, capture the flag type competitions.
It's a famous scene in the movie about Facebook where the kids are the first 2 hackers to win, get the job at Facebook.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. So just find the next Facebook and win that competition. But finding creative ways to demonstrate your aptitude in a particular field is going to help you get your foot in the door and demonstrate to employers that yes, I have these skills, I am a self-starter, and you should hire me.
Well, thanks very much. Appreciate your time. Will
Pleasure.
Marco. We're going to take a quick short break, and when we come back, how a librarian and a repo man found their place in cybersecurity. We're back in a minute.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. When you hear there are jobs open in cybersecurity, you probably think there could find people with degrees in computer science or engineering, but think again. Executives from a wide span of industries are going to join us now in just a minute to talk about breaking down those very assumptions, and they'll detail what they're doing to put people without technical backgrounds into the digital workforce. Part of that effort includes training programs like this one. Let's take a look.
If I had a message to young women who are interested in tech, I would say, don't doubt yourself. Technology definitely interested me, but I really didn't know how to make the jump. Once I heard about the Akamai Technical Academy program, it seemed like it was meant for someone like me. My name is Takara Larson, and I am from Medford, Massachusetts. Even though I was doing well in my former career, I was getting a little bit stuck. It was at a point where I really couldn't see a way up. I think it's easy sometimes to think that you can't do certain things. Now it's really silly because this program shows that I did have the skills, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to have done this.
The Akamai Technical Academy for us is a program that we started to help really broaden the pool of candidates that we want to attract to the organization. For Akamai, talent is everything. We are in the technology sector. Innovation is very important, and we feel like diversity is the gateway to innovation.
Within the tech community, there is a shortage of diverse candidates. The Technical Academy was put together to take candidates and then put them through a 6-month program to give them those skills and the exposure to Akamai. I don't want to hire somebody for a day. I want to hire them for 20 years. If it takes you 6 months to be fantastic, great, we'll give you that 6 months.
A program like Akamai Technical Academy is a bit unique, although this is something that I would encourage other companies to take in consideration. What it's afforded us is to essentially tap into talent that we would have never typically pursued under any other circumstances. We had no idea the volume of people who are either underemployed or are not pursuing their passions.
It was not for the faint of heart. It was very few days off. I had homework, I had assessments, I had projects. My fiance was definitely a support system for me. He helped me see the long view of, okay, things are tough right now, but think about where you're going to be in 6 months.
Takara is a great example of someone who spent many years in higher education and essentially felt like she wasn't necessarily pursuing her passion. And in our process, we were able to uncover that she absolutely embodies the things that would make her successful here at Akamai.
I think the best part, definitely the people. I had amazing classmates. We were able to help each other. I think my classmates really helped me along to be successful.
I'm extremely proud of what we've been able to accomplish with the Akamai Technical Academy. It's really changed lives in helping people to really give themselves a fresh start or really to reinvent themselves along a path that will help them to pursue their passion.
To be on this new career trajectory, it's really exciting. It's definitely not easy to take a risk like this, but I'm just really happy I stuck with it and I worked hard and that I'm here now.
All right, with that as background, let's get to our panel now. Joining us is Andy Ellis. We just saw Andy in the video about Akamai's training program. He's the Chief Security Officer for Akamai Technologies. Joseph Santamaria is the Vice President of Information Technology and the Chief Information Officer for PSEG Services Corporation. Kelly Isikoff is the CISO at RenaissanceRE. Patrick Heim is the Operating Partner and CISO for Clear Sky. And John Bosco is the Chief Information Officer at Northwell Health. Thank you all for being with us. And Andy, let me just come back to you with respect to what we just saw. There's actually a wide range of topics included in that training program, everything from diversity to the core skill set that someone may need. Right now, what are technology companies looking for when they're trying to bring these employees into the pipeline?
Well, I think that what we often talk about, certainly in discussions like this, is sort of the hacking skill sets, right? Those technology skill sets, being able to look at systems and how do you take them apart. But the reality is, when you think about cybersecurity jobs, there's a wide range of technology, people, and process jobs. Right? When I look at it, one of my favorite people who've moved across is a librarian, because one of the things we have to do is manage large document stores. And so we look for people who have a skill set that can translate, and rather than thinking of it as an entry-level job, it's really an insertion-level job. right? How do you insert yourself into a job that's about cybersecurity, but it takes skills from other disciplines as well?
Let me challenge you a little bit on that with respect to a librarian. So we immediately think Dewey Decimal System and cataloging and having pieces of paper that are matched to books on a shelf. So understanding that that is a skill set in and of itself, everything has gone digital. So how do you take that analog person and plug them in?
So many modern librarians have already made that transition from analog to digital. They're dealing with computer systems. They have to deal with inventory, finding the right document or book at the right time. If they're a reference librarian at a university, they've had to learn technical jargon already. It's just a matter of learning new technical jargon, right? Where do you file these documents? How do you know where they are? How do you go get them on demand and learn a little bit about the contents within them? That gives you the ability to move over and to now start to learn more of the security stack that might let you move out of being a job that's principally a librarian and move out potentially into management.
Now, Kelly, you've found someone who has a set of skills that we would also think might be in the current world somewhat antiquated, and yet you've taken a repo man.
Yeah, so in one of my previous roles, I had a repo man who actually came over and was an amazing pen tester. And the skills are very similar. It's just
What? I'm sorry?
he was a repo man. So
And a what kind of tester?
a penetration tester.
Okay, thank you.
So a penetration tester is very similar to a repo man. It's someone that goes in and looks at a computer system. They have that security mindset. They look for different types of vulnerabilities. They look for different ways to penetrate the network and exploit it. So a repo man actually has to do that as well, just in a more analog world. This is just a digital version of that type of job.
And how long did it take for the transition to take hold?
I mean, he had computer skill sets already, so it was just a simple, migration into that, and he developed some of those penetration skills, testing skills over a matter of 6 months to a year.
Now, Joe, you may work in one of the most vulnerable sectors of the economy. We hear a lot of the stories about whether or not our grid is safe and what kind of skill set you need to protect the electricity grid in the event of just simple malfunctions, technologically speaking, the things that are more sinister in nature. So is there a different skill set that's required among your employees when you're talking about critical infrastructure versus core technology?
Yeah, and I would say use the word one of the most vulnerable. We don't like to think of ourselves as vulnerable, maybe one of the most interesting for hackers.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would say to a degree there is some differences, but I would say a lot of the cybersecurity skills are portable, transferable across companies and industries. We have obviously in our sector a strong compliance component, both from institutions like the Nuclear Regulatory Commission or the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission that put some twist to what we're looking for. But obviously for entry levels, we're not expecting those resources to be familiar with those regulations. We train them. We look for skills that are typically foundational. So we're one of those companies that like to get bachelors, but we will also look for associates with equivalent work experience. And we have people who come from all different backgrounds. We also tend to highlight a lot of the technical skills, but as someone just mentioned, there are a lot of cybersecurity roles that are not technical per se necessarily. It could be somebody who validates supply chain partners, looks for third-party risks, auditors type of skills, and all of those are transferable across industries in my view.
Now, John, same for you. I mean, you're in the healthcare industry, which has its own set of privacy issues, everything from HIPAA to a whole host of others. When companies are out there now trying to underwrite insurance, they can scan someone's personal data and make a determination about whether or not they're insurable without ever necessarily having spoken to that person. So for all the health data that you protect, what do you need in the employee stack?
Again, I'm not so sure that it's any different than some other industries. We need everything from the super engineers all the way to just business analysts who understand security and privacy and these security concepts and can work with the business side of our house to sort of promote best practices and promote an understanding of security and privacy. So when we have a project that's taking place, there may be security engineers that are involved in that aspect of it, but we need people to translate that information to, for us, our physicians and nurses and folks like that.
And how do they go about doing that specifically? I mean, in fact, what skills are required among that group to interface with the medical community?
I think it's two different kinds of people for us. The engineers are very technical, very skilled folks. The others may be it may have been a nurse who just was looking for something different and came to IT and said, I was involved in some of your implementations and I really liked it, so I'd like to come and work for you guys, and we can teach them and train them on some of the basic concepts around security and privacy, and then they can combine that with their business skills and be productive for us pretty quickly.
Patrick, tell us a little about ClearSky. It's one of those names that sounds very, very high-tech or very new age, if you will, in terms of
We're
where the
actually
high-tech
a venture capital fund that's
so
focused on investing in security companies.
All right, so
My background, let's say I've graduated from being a CISO. I used to run security at a number of large companies, including the healthcare sector and in the technology sector for Dropbox and Salesforce. And one of the things I've learned is really kind of reflecting what everybody's been saying. It's like you have to have the right blend of skill sets in a successful security organization. And you have to match up people's personalities and interests. You're not going to take somebody who's highly process-oriented and turn them into a creative, antagonistic hacker, for example. And likewise, you're not going to take somebody who's the most amazing technologist in the organization and put them in charge of a people training program. It's a different way, different mindsets, different personalities, and being able to recognize those skill sets and creating the right blend in a security organization is essential.
So when you're looking at the various investment options that you have in front of you, I mean, what are the areas that seem to be, number one, most in demand, and two, most interesting to you as an investor?
I hate to say it, but one of the biggest demands in one of our investment philosophies is invest in companies that reduce the need for people. The reason is multifold. I mean, there's.
If we can get Will back out here, there's
good news here. I mean, the reason is that, as we said, there aren't enough people in the marketplace, and organizations have the immediate demand. It's a clear reason. The other one is, quite frankly, it's machines attacking machines. And you can't always have people in the middle of these processes, in the middle of these flows. We need to have more automation, intelligent analysis. In other words, what we want to do is use the technology that pre-processes, that analyzes, that reduces the data volume so that intelligent humans can consume it and add value to it.
Kelly, you're kind of in the same space, I would imagine, because insurance is becoming increasingly dependent on technology, as I understand it. I mean, we've got companies that can underwrite now in ways that never involve an intermediary, right? I mean, you're going to big data, you're going to analytics.
There's a lot of movement in insurtech, as well as there's a lot of new technologies around different companies, for smaller and medium-sized companies like my company, that have a need for more sophisticated products that can help us do what a big organization would do, like a Citigroup or JP Morgan. So definitely we're looking at more of these technologies that can make us more insightful and more actionable and better protected. And there's a lot of great products out there and a lot of great smaller companies that are developing these capabilities for small to medium-sized companies like my own.
So do you then look for companies as opposed to employees that help flesh out your capabilities?
No, I mean, we actually have a really good amount of high-quality employees, and we try to train and mentor through some of these different feeder-type roles within our organization. And we've had a lot of really good success in that, in developing a lot of individuals in the security domains. But we're also looking at a lot of different service providers and security groups that help us and augment us with those high-tech security engineering skill sets. It's really hard to find outside of Silicon Valley.
Andy, you're in Silicon Valley, obviously. I mean, and yet we heard from Will that in New York, it's also one of the biggest centers. There's Southern California has it, other parts of the country have it. With respect to that, with finding talent, with developing talent, is there a geographical problem given the concentration of individuals who like to gravitate to Palo Alto, for lack of a better?
So certainly there's a little bit of a geographical problem. We're sort of blessed being both a Boston company with a presence in Silicon Valley that we're drawing on both of those pools. But we do definitely see that. We see, security talent can be hard to find. So can you identify ways to have staff that work remotely? A third of my team doesn't even work from one of our offices. Whether they're up in Toronto, or out in Seattle. You look for the people where they are, but you're looking for the people that then have the skill set to work remotely. Not everybody does. Although everybody would love to, right? Everyone wants to say.
Listen, I mean, I've done both, and it's a transition. When you decide to work at home, and just maybe there's one person home, maybe there's nobody home, it's an entirely different work experience than being in an office with a couple hundred people.
Right, it absolutely is. And for people who are doing a transition, that's probably not the right maneuver because you really want to surround them with people who can help develop and grow them. And so we see regional initiatives, like in Massachusetts, we have the Cybersecurity Education and Training Consortium led by Katie Stebbins at UMass. And the idea there is to work among the educational institutions and both the 4-year and the 2-year programs to be able to give people the skills that they would need coming out of those programs to start in the security field.
Patrick, before I get to you, let me just follow up on that, because UMass is something, university system I'm familiar with. A place like Lowell has suddenly become very specialized with respect to certain technological skill sets. Are you starting to see these hubs develop around academia now where they do kind of drill down on certain skill sets within technology?
Absolutely, right. We see that at UMass Lowell. We see it out of the Wentworth Institute of Technology, which we work very closely with on our co-op program. And what we're seeing is getting students this hands-on experience where they understand a keyboard and a command line. I think that was Professor Jules talked about that earlier, that's a skill that's at the technology level always transferable. If you're comfortable with the command line and you can work your way around a Unix or Windows system, right, that's a very powerful skill set.
Go ahead, Patrick.
I speak with a lot of CISOs as well as startup company founders, and I've seen an interesting trend develop in conferences and discussions, which is they like to brag about the crazy places they're sourcing new talent and talk about how they're bucking the trend. It's like, look at me, I found an amazing team in Spain, or I just hired a group of developers in Argentina or someplace in Eastern Europe. So it's actually become like a point of pride for startup company founders and CISOs within their own communities to talk about the places where they're sourcing new talent, because it's a global marketplace. And cybersecurity, we talked about security operations centers and people sitting behind big screens and impressive dark rooms. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can work remotely. We have that capability. There are no ties to any kind of geographic locality to do the job.
Although, Joe, that's being called into question in the current environment as to where jobs should be domiciled, who should be getting them. When in a company as large as yours, when you're looking at that type of thing, do you literally look outside our borders, where some people believe that a threat to a company like yours resides, and so do you focus more locally than globally?
Yeah, that's good. We typically tend to focus more locally for a couple of reasons. One is regulatory, but also more importantly, cybersecurity professionals like the mission. They like, I won't say the fight, but they like the protection, the big, larger aspects of cybersecurity and what they're trying to do, what they're trying to protect. In our case, we're very well known in the areas we serve, and our mission, as you mentioned earlier, as operators of critical infrastructure, is something that people connect very well to, especially those who know our brand. So we tend to partner with local universities. We do, like someone else I think mentioned, we do outsource some of our entry-level jobs, maybe the more repetitive tasks. Because we don't, we look for scale, we look for companies that have the dollars to invest in automation and do that really, really well. And we tend to keep the positions that are more, where knowledge of industry, knowledge of our operations, of our configuration architecture is more relevant. And that tends to be a little more local than global for us.
Let me go back out to the audience to get some questions and get more interactivity, if you will, since it's that kind of thing. If anyone has a question, please, again, raise your hand and we'll rush a microphone to you. We do have our mic runners. Feel free. Don't be shy. Some of you appear shy. So John, let me come to you with respect to, again, maybe some of the broader issues that we're going through right now. We have a skills gap. We also have a labor shortage, and it's particularly acute in the healthcare industry, where the basic jobs of nursing and practitioners are going wanting. When you look at, and I don't mean to make this a political question, but when you look at the overall strategy right now of the current administration, both with respect to education and training, with respect to immigration reform, do you find that there are some headwinds here that might prevent you from getting the people you want right now, just given the overall environment in the U.S.?
Well, I think there are. I think we're challenged in healthcare across the board when it comes to filling positions. Very much so in IT. Healthcare isn't always the first place that people think they want to go to work. If they're looking for a career in IT, they're thinking about going to Silicon Valley. They're thinking about going to the big name tech companies. Healthcare is a lot more advanced technologically than it used to be, but it's coming from a place and a reputation where there wasn't a lot of automation. There wasn't a lot of
stacks of
investment
paperwork
IT.
in the doctor's office.
So we're still, I mean, if you think about it, only 10 years ago, there was almost no use of electronic medical records in the country.
Right.
And now that's very prevalent, but it comes with us not having enough people to fill those positions. So we're pretty much challenged across the board, and have to do anything and everything we can to try to address that in our recruitment strategies and our training strategies and the colleges that we try to hook up with and our internship programs. It's just any means possible to find the right folks, or to find the right folks who may already have the skills or have the raw fundamental skills that we think would be good people to develop.
All right, let me thank you all for your involvement. Thanks very much for joining us. Thank our panel, Andy Ellis, Joseph Santamaria, Kelly Isikoff, Patrick Heim, and John Bosco. We'll take one more quick break, and when we come back, turn to solutions in education. We'll look at what's being done to give students the skills they need to land a job in information security. We're back right after this.
Thank you.
Quite yet.
Stop the roll, please. Stop the
And welcome back once again. It is estimated that there are some 40,000 information security jobs going unfilled each year. And it leads to the question, what more can be done to educate prospective workers so they have the skills needed to land one of those jobs? For that now, we turn to a panel made up of people who are working to provide solutions by forming partnerships and launching programs to meet specific skill needs. Now, you'll also meet a woman who recently completed her Cybersecurity Bachelor of Sciences degree. Please welcome our panel. Bridget Gray is Executive Vice President at Scholas. Wayne Kunow is Head of Cyber and Information Security Governance at Barclays International. Nicholas Lala is Senior Project Manager of the Urban Innovation Group at the New York City Economic Development Corporation. Amanda Gould is Chief Administrative Officer at the American Women's College at Bay Path University. And Anne-Marie Johnson is a recent graduate of American Women's College at Bay Path University and now a Field Technical Representative at Unisys. And I welcome you all. Anne-Marie, let me start with you, since you are the poster child for our conversation for all intents and purposes, or our poster adult, I guess I should say. What, number one, prompted you to make a move into this field, and how was the transition experience for you?
Okay, well, I started out in the healthcare field and was finding myself at that time doing more and more, as other panelists have mentioned, cybersecurity, technology, let's say. And then I found that it was time for me to make a decision as to where I was going to go with my career. And I decided that I wanted to go back to school. And I found, because I was more on the technology side, that I would go ahead and pursue my career in that realm. And then by searching and knowing that there is a need for cybersecurity, I decided to go ahead and look for a program that would go ahead and enhance that and give me start to open a door for me to walk through.
And you landed a job.
Yes.
So, Amanda, we discuss Silicon Valley a lot in the financial press about how women are underrepresented in the industry, broadly speaking, and I can only imagine in this subculture, if you will, of technology, might even be more dramatic. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's strikingly dramatic. Only 11% of incumbents in cybersecurity are women. And so when you're thinking of filling an enormous skills gap in the country, you have to think beyond just the traditional pipeline of students, and whether that's focusing on the skills like we've heard from prior panelists about that really may meet social service type desires of a lot of the students we have, the types of skills that they bring for perseverance and tenacity and puzzle solving, curiosity. There's something that's out there certainly that we're not tapping into. We're talking a lot about the technical side, and there's a whole group of people who don't even realize what's involved in a cyber career. And when you survey young girls, only 16% could even tell you what a cyber job is all about. And so I think we have to do more to educate young people, but we also have to focus on the adult market. And at the American Women's College, we educate adult women who are looking for a career change, to advance themselves, looking to potentially take credits they've collected over a lifetime and funnel them into a bachelor's degree, and really try to get into an experience where they could be working full-time, supporting their family, but also getting an education. So our online accelerated program.
Let me ask you about that number you brought up with respect to young women's awareness of cybersecurity. So I have a 20-year-old daughter who, as I understand it, has sent or received somewhere in the neighborhood of 400,000 Snapchats in the last 6 years. That is 165 a day, right? Tongue out to the left, tongue out to the right. I mean, they're familiar with technology. Why is it that this particular area seems so unfamiliar to them?
Well, we use phrases like hackers and geeks, and there's phrases that are out there, and I don't think they're thinking about phrases like protectors or guardians, or people who really have a knack for trying to disseminate information. People who are good with digital media, with social media, with psychology, with counseling. That's a whole avenue of skills that we're not tapping into.
Now, Nicholas, we haven't spoken at all really about even municipal government's role in this entire area. And not only do governments themselves need the expertise, but they also play a role in helping to educate young people who are coming up. So with respect to New York, what's the focus of the Economic Development Corporation in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. I think cities have a responsibility to train their workforce for the jobs of the future, and we recognize at the City of New York and the New York City Economic Development Corporation that cybersecurity is a growing market in New York City. We're investing $30 million in the ecosystem broadly, really focused on training and connecting talent to jobs and spurring innovation. So what we're doing is we're launching a suite of public-private partnerships really aimed at establishing a place-based hub for the community to foster cross-sector collaboration, a series of applied learning programs, and a cyber boot camp to diversify the talent pipeline in the long term.
Where do they go for that?
I'm sorry?
Where do they go for that? And
So
someone wants to, you know?
yeah, so we're in the, I'll give you kind of a sense of where we're at right now. So suite of public-private partnerships across a range of programmatic areas. We're going to be partnering with a leading cybersecurity bootcamp operator to expand their training into the cyberspace. To your point about access and inclusivity, we're going to be partnering with a local community college to make sure that we're targeting folks from underserved communities to diversify the pipeline in the long term and fill the talent gap in the short term.
Now, Wayne, at Barclays, which is a large international bank, I mean, we've seen the vulnerabilities of the sector of late with a wide variety of your competitors, you know, that have been out there and have either been hacked or made some mistakes themselves with respect to the protection of personal information. Is that your area of focus when it comes to cybersecurity, or are there broader interests when it comes to the entire banking sector, given how complex and technologically reliant it is today?
Yeah, I would say that's really just one small aspect of it. We're looking much, much broader than just that. If you think about the threat actors that are out there today, it's always someone else who's trying to get in. It's not just stealing the data, but stealing credentials, committing fraud, and things like that. So there's so many different things when you think about cybersecurity that we can try to address within Barclays. And we have a team of people that are very broad-based, and it even goes down to our applications where they have to have security built into the applications by the application developers, not necessarily part of the cybersecurity team.
And Bridget, with respect to dealing with what we call, in this case, overlooked communities, reaching down there and trying to motivate kids who may not necessarily have complete access. I mean, we certainly don't have universal access to technology, let alone maybe the more complex areas that we're talking about today. How do you get in there and provide that type of education so that there is another path through technology for kids to find gainful employment?
And so part of what we do is we work very specifically with employers. In the previous panels, there were conversations around levels of skill, degree, but when you work really closely with an employer and you're very intentional about it, you can actually work through some of those kind of barriers into a job that's specific to cyber. And so we work closely with employers like Barclays to develop very specific curriculum that is needed for Barclays, and then take those students, train them up, and then put them into Barclays and internship opportunities so that they're then transitioned into full-time jobs at either Barclays or some other company that we're working with.
Is this at the university level, junior college, or even into primary and K through 12?
We're talking 18 and over,
Okay.
And we're talking folks that may not have a post-secondary degree, someone that, I mean, Anne-Marie mentioned 11% of women in technology, but if you dig deeper, 3% of women of color in technology. So you start to think in terms of, we're looking at women, 18 to 24-year-olds, people that are transitioning careers, those who have been underemployed for a really long time, working 2 part-time jobs just to make ends meet. That's how deep we go into a community to find people.
And so what's the pitch then when you're there? I mean, what do you tell them? Because, it may not feel natural. It doesn't really feel natural to anybody to say, okay, I'm going into cybersecurity,
Yeah.
So to bring that entire language of technology to a group that, as you say, is wildly underrepresented at 3%. What's the sale?
And so the sale is IT. And so people, we advertise really heavily for just IT in general. Scholas trains in all levels of IT. Cyber is an area that we've put specific focus on. And so when people come, they come to us and they're looking for us. But we also pitch to high schools for transitioning high schoolers. We look at organizations that works primarily with women, women of color. And so it's really students find us through advertising that we do, word of mouth from former students that have come to us as well.
Can I
go ahead,
add-
please.
yeah, so in addition to kind of an applied learning curricula and strong employer partnerships, the other thing that we found in crafting our learning program specifically for folks from underserved communities is to really provide wraparound services, case managers to support them, troubleshooting family issues, career advising, professional development. We've talked about the importance of soft skills, being able to think critically and analytically. So it's not just the curricula and the employer partners, but making sure that there's a guide to help these students along the pathway.
And the other piece to that is our training doesn't cost. So when you start to think in terms of barriers into a cyber field, if a degree is there or necessary to go into, you overlook a ton of people that would be driven and motivated and ready to work. And so our training doesn't cost. We have an even playing field, a level playing field. And part of our training
Given
too,
what I'm paying for school right now, I may be
Yes.
sending my children to you.
you can send them our way. We'd be happy to train them. And even giving just the part of our training is not just the technical credentials, as Nick mentioned. It's also making sure that there are the soft skill training, the kind of business essential skills, financial coaching, so that we can make sure that as you're entering into these careers from a financial standpoint, you understand how to use your money in asset building.
Now, speaking of asset building, so when most people think of Barclays or any other big financial institutions, either domestically or around the world, they're like, I'm getting my MBA, I'm going into investment banking, I'm going to trade my brains out, I'm going to be a hedge fund manager, I'm going to use you as my prime broker. How do you get that mindset change? Because, and granted, it's changed a little bit. A lot of kids are going into technology, but not necessarily cybersecurity. They're going to be internet billionaires of some sort. You know, how do you get a place like Barclays to reorient kids who really have their mind on the money side of the equation when you think of your firm?
So really, it's multi-parts in terms of what's going on within Barclays. So we're in the technology organization. That's where the security organization resides today, and we're looking for a different set of talent as well. We started a partnership with Scholas 6 years ago, and we haven't looked back. When we started the program, we did not have a cybersecurity program. So a few years ago, we helped them develop one. So we co-developed that program. And now what we're doing, so we heard one of the other panelists talking about hiring people from exotic locations. We do as well. It's called the Bronx.
Yeah.
So it's in our own backyard.
Yeah.
So Barclays has an emphasis and a focus on making a difference within the community. Okay, that means we need to hire people that may be part of our customer base and things like that. We have a credit card business. We have multiple businesses within Barclays. So we need to hire people that are like our customers so we can work with those kind of people. That means people of diverse backgrounds. And one of the things that we've been able to achieve by working with Scholas is addressing some of that diversity and bringing people with some diverse talent into there. We've also been able to find is a lot of people actually have great background. They just need an opportunity. And what Barclays has done is they focused on giving them that opportunity. Of course, they've had the training from Scholas, so they have a strong foundation of things. And I can't emphasize enough some of the soft skills training that they get as well, because that's something you don't necessarily see out of a college graduate, the soft skills and how do they operate within a professional environment. So that's not always there. Some programs will have it, but not all the programs do. So I think that's important that we look at Scholas and how we work closely with them. We develop a program that's specific to our needs, and that same program can be used by many other companies as well. And we found out that we bring someone on for a 6-month internship. We can't hire everyone, although we'd like to. We can't hire everyone. However, if we don't, they now have Barclays on their resume for 6 months, and they get a job somewhere else.
Yeah. Emery, let me ask you a little, talk about soft skills and the prospect of going back to college. I know my own mother did this at 45 to become a teacher. Scared the living bejesus out of her because she had not graduated high school, got her GED, and at 45 goes back into college with 18-year-old kids. Yes. What's the emotional side of this when you try to make that decision to reorient, rebuild, start over, and go back into a situation that you haven't been in for quite some time?
Well, to be honest with you, it's very scary as an adult to go into a program and to try to decide that this is the avenue that you wish to go. And for me, it was imperative to find a program that that took care of some of the needs that I needed, and that's what I found at the American Women's College. It is only women, and we learn differently than men, and we see ourselves in our jobs.
My wife tells me that every day.
Yes, exactly. And we see ourselves differently as when we work, and what our values are, our core values are. And it was important to me to find a program that personified that. I work in a group of 30 men, and I am the only woman. And it has been that way in 12 years of my technology background. And that is, I see more and more women coming into the field. But I felt for me, I wanted to go ahead and pursue my college degree and to find something that was, for me as a woman, to be able to pursue.
Let me go to the audience and see. We'll come back for a couple more questions, but yes, sir, right up there.
So hi, my name is Keith Babushchuk. I work at Wick Technical Community College in Raleigh. And one question I have for the educators is, how do you hire and support educators and instructors for these kind of programs?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of a, Amanda, as a second order issue, right? I mean, it's
yes,
you can't teach people if you don't have the
right. Staffing is certainly a challenge. I think that one of the exciting things, however, is because those who work in the field see the need, they're eager and excited to help build the talent pool. And so we found people who are volunteering their time as advisory council members for our program from Facebook, from the FBI, from the CIA, from Fidelity Investments, who just are eager to start developing a pipeline of students. And we recognize that 87% is a stat I think Bridget confirmed for me of people who moved from different industries or different fields into cyber. And so recognizing that there's a way to do interdisciplinary training as well and really develop cyber talent across all of our majors is something that I think could eventually help us shift the tide as well.
Now, Bridget, I mean, with respect to compensation, you're a nonprofit, so does that become an issue for the people who are doing the training, or are they gifting their time in order to help?
So instructors are the absolute hardest to find in any training track we have, and cyber is even harder. So it takes a long time to find. As people talk about how long it takes to hire someone in the cyber industry, think about trying to hire someone to teach in the cyber industry. It can be equally as long. But compensation does play a role. I mean, we have a cyber training in New York in partnership with Barclays. We have a cyber training in our DC region in partnership with Capital One. And in thinking in terms of the level of skill you need just to be able to teach at an entry-level cyber, you're starting to think about the region and how expensive it is, and you're competing with colleges and
Columbia, NYU.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it creates this really hard time. Some of the things we've done is we've hired instructors that will come in on a contract basis and then train up some of our graduates to be instructors. And so that's one of the things that we've been finding really helpful for us, is to take someone that's gone through training, who shows the propensity for leadership and really understands the material, bring in a contracted person that has the higher level skill, and then train that student up. The other thing we do is, because we work so closely with employers, they also come into our space too. And so they do teaching and a lot of corporate engagement with us and with students.
And Nick, though, when you have an NYU, when you have Columbia, when you have a whole host of institutions in a city of 9 million people, where it's the most competitive education market in the country, except for maybe Silicon Valley, where everybody's going somewhere. How do you, again, reorient people towards other opportunity sets that, might be more appropriate for them, and they don't have to necessarily shell out 60 grand a year for college?
Yeah, so two things. Just to add to the how do you find educators, one of the programs that we're doing, we're creating a cyber core of industry professionals. We're training them to serve as adjuncts. We're putting them in the classroom and getting them to help redevelop curricula to make it more in line with industry needs. So I think that's an important point. And you mentioned, Cornell Tech, Columbia,
sure.
NYU.
I didn't mean not to.
Yeah, sure. I would add that kind of the lifeblood of the middle class in the city is the CUNY system. Right. And so, not to knock on Barclays, but banks in general and corporates struggle with the talent gap in cybersecurity, but they're recruiting from the same 25 universities. And so they need to do a better job of, and I know Barclays is...
Not Barclays.
Barclays is doing great. They need to do a better job reaching out to more diverse communities and other universities and establish those relationships. And those are the type of employer linkages that we're trying to build.
Yeah. More questions? Amanda, I do have one from you from the audience with respect to the college itself and the goal of the Women's College. I mean, what exactly is the mission statement for the school?
Yeah. So Bay Path University has been around for over 100 years in trying to advance women through education. And we specifically launched the American Women's College for adult women to receive their undergraduate credentials. Knowing they have complicated lives, a big portion of our students are first generation, a lot of single mothers, low income, diverse, really trying to figure out how to advance their lives for themselves and for their families. And we knew that doing a non-traditional model, an accelerated online, one that they could fit into their lives while they still have an income, retrain themselves, that's all part of it, but also women as empowered learners and leaders is a big part of our core. And we try to train all of the leadership skills to help them also gain their confidence and really build their excitement to go out and change the world.
All right, well, thank you. And a big thanks to all of our esteemed panelists who came here this evening to provide their insights and share their solutions. Working Nation is dedicated to raising awareness about the job skills gap and training for jobs of the future. Now, you can find more information on their website, and you can follow them on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, their YouTube channel, and Flipboard. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Have a good evening.
Pleasure.
Good question. Yeah.